Hey everybody, I just want to take a few minutes and talk about the difference between cause of death and manner of death. And if you've ever watched a TV show like Law and Order or Criminal Minds or any movie that deals with forensic science and investigations, you've probably heard the term cause of death. And there really are an infinite number of ways to die, but some examples for cause of death would be drowning or asphyxiation, uh, strangulation, gunshot wound, stabbing, etc., etc. Manner of death, however, there are only five categories that fall under the heading of manner of death. And when a body is taken to the coroner's office, he or she will assign a manner of death. And so the categories are homicide, which is pretty much what we'll be talking about in this class exclusively. Suicide, which is another thing we will talk about in this class. Homicide, suicide. Then you have natural causes. You have accident, and then you have unknown. So just it's unclear what the manner of death was. And let me give you an example of how a couple of these a couple examples that fit into both categories, cause of death and manner of death. If I tell you that somebody died due to a blunt force trauma to the head, right? That's the cause of death, but we still don't know, just from that amount of information, we don't know what the manner of death was. You could die from a suicide, hitting your head or jumping off a building and hitting your head. That would be blunt force trauma. So that'd be a suicide. Obviously homicide, if somebody hits somebody over the head with a hammer or a rock or any other weapon, that would be a homicide with the same cause of death, blunt force trauma. It could be an accident as well, right? If you fall down the stairs and hit your head and there was no ill intent, so there's no homicide, it wasn't a suicide, it was just an accident. So there you have one cause of death, blunt force trauma, that might fall into three different categories, and it's up to the investigators and the coroner to figure out what is the true manner of death. So that's a little bit of just forensic science and forensic psychology, and I really want to get that out of the way here at the beginning because most of this class, since this is a psychology class, we will be talking about individual serial killers and mass murderers along this timeline, from the time that they were born all the way up through their first kills, and in fact all of their killing, up until they are apprehended by the authorities. So we're really interested in the psychological development of these individuals, and a lot of that goes back to when they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years of age. So we're going to pay attention to that and then talk about when they actually started killing. And the average age for serial killers to start killing is 28 years of age. So there's a lot that can happen between the time that you were 5 and the time that you were 28. And then we'll follow the serial killers through until they're caught by the police. So that's the window that we will be examining. We are not going to focus our energy on court cases and what happens in the court proceedings, because that's really for a criminal psychology, criminal justice, or a law school type class. Nor are we interested in the details of how investigations were conducted and how they grabbed different blood samples and fingerprints, etc., because that's really for a forensic science or a forensic psychology class. But we're going to spend our time talking about the development of psychopathy and psychopathology and sociopathy, antisocial personality disorder, and a bunch of other conditions and traits and disorders that these serial killers and mass murderers have or could have. So we're focusing on the psychology. We're not so much focusing on the legal proceedings and what happens to them in jail or in prison as they go through these court cases or as they spend the rest of their life in jail. That's really secondary for this class.